Well, good morning. It's cold outside. And welcome to the neighborhood, the Nomad Neighborhood in New Mexico. And glad to have you as my guest. And what I'd like to do today is sit down and have a little chat. So I am going to invite you to have a seat right here. I'll bring you a cup of coffee. I'll sit here and we'll have a little talk. And here we are. And what I wanted to talk to you about today was your reactions to a number of videos, but what's predominant today is the being an introvert in Quartzsite, or what it's like to be shy in Quartzsite and how to overcome them. That seemed to have struck a chord with quite a number of people. And let's see, how many views do we have on that video? We have, right now, this morning, I think it's 2 days ago I did it. It is, it's not my number one video. My number one video was 6 RV disasters you don't want to have happen to you. That had 3,000 views, and we're at 2,600 and I know if you watch YouTube, those are pitifully small numbers, but for little old Travels with Dottie, it's a lot, and I'm happy. And it means there's a strong interest. The thumbnail, Introvert in Quartzsite, ? And yes, it's possible. Here's how. So let's take a look at what people said and let's have a little discussion, shall we? So the first one was, let's see, graded with summer stardust. Great advice on talking about rigs. Was an only child. Love solitude. A life of meeting the public and business sales gave me the skills to converse with folks without fear by just making a comment about the weather and or pets for starters, which usually opens up another topic. I still love solitude the best. My best nomad buddy is also a loner. We started our friendship talking about our dogs. She loves solitude too. 71 years old, 18 years solo female full-time RVer with pets. And she said it really well. If you are consider yourself kind of a loner, maybe an outsider, and maybe an introvert, that's not required. You're going to find yourself, if you make the pilgrimage, what I call the annual Nomad pilgrimage to Quartzsite, Arizona, you're going to find yourself in good fellowship and company, because they're filled with people that have that sensibility, right? I think there's a comment. I hope I copied it. I think there's a great comment from Pup Camper 58, my good friend Cheryl, about, what I described in the video describes her really well. It describes all of us. I mean, last year in the camp that I shared with friends in La Posa South, in the long-term visitor area in Quartzsite, we were all loners, and we knew how to respect each other's privacy. Because sometimes people would stay in their rig all day long, and we'd wake up, we wouldn't see them morning, noon, afternoon, early evening, and occasionally, because we care about our friends, we would send a text, just checking on you to make sure you're okay. And that might even just get a like, and we'd know she or he is okay. But we were used to and not offended by people just kind of going to the rig in solitude, and they didn't come out. That was frequent. I do that sometimes, so that's totally okay. I want to go off topic for a second here, because I said so now I've gotten my attitude about sort of negative comments has gotten different. I'm just deleting the awful ones, but some of them I think are a little bit funny. And I'll share them without the screen name, because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But this guy says, I did a video where I talked about insurance, and I did a lot of calculations, right? And some of them involved, at least by implication, the time value of money and returns on investment. I was looking at self-insurance and saying, instead of giving the insurance company, $100 a month for an insurance policy, what if you took that $100 and put it in a savings account, or better yet, in the stock market, like in an index fund, like an S&P index fund that follows the Standard & Poor's index. And I said, that's, a good conservative number there is 9% over time. So this guy starts off, well, Mr. Financial. Now that's a dig by anyone's definition. I've kept an account of a portfolio over the past 22 years of our retirement, and the average gross gain is 6.6%, with a 68.8 stock, 26.5 bonds, and 4.9% cash. Your 9% sounds pretty aggressive to me, thanks to Excel spreadsheet and Quicken. And I said, well, the S&P, I responded, the S&P 500, and I gave him a source. When I come back with these things, I usually do, I give the source for my information, so they don't say, well, you're wrong. This is pretty standard stuff, and you'll see how conservative I was. The S&P 500, including dividends and reinvested, has delivered an approximate annualized return of 14.6% over the last 10 years. Then I ran 22 years, and it works out to just over 11%. And I said, I don't really appreciate the Mr. Financial comment. So what he's talking about is he's got a retirement portfolio. And of course, when you're retired, you may not want to put 100% into the S&P 500. I get that. But clearly, that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about taking a little chunk of money that you would put into insurance and instead put it into an investment. You're not going to break it down conservatively like you would take your whole investment portfolio. So he missed the point there. And if he just left off the well, Mr. Financial, and just said, opened it with, I've kept an account for 22 years, here's the breakdown, and here's the return, your 9% sounds pretty aggressive. And I would have responded, yes, the 9% is more aggressive than yours because they're for completely different purposes. I'm willing to step out on a limb and bank that a stock market crash isn't going to happen for my little small thing for pet insurance or dental insurance. I'm not going to. If I had big investments for my retirement, I wouldn't put all my eggs in those baskets. I would diversify quite smartly, like this gentleman did, in stocks, bonds, and cash. Enough said. All right. Grumpowski. He's commented quite a few times, and I said I had to kind of chuckle at your screen name, and he said, my wife assigned me that. Great advice in video as always. I kind of find myself as an ambivert. My comfort spot is being an introvert, but I could switch over and be comfortable socializing. I just don't feel like I need that. I've always struggled with remembering people's names as a good idea with the picture. I'll talk about that in a minute. What I try to do is mention their name when I'm talking to them maybe a couple of times within the conversation. Then also, when we end the conversation and go our separate ways, I make sure I mention his or her name. Now it gets real. If you meet a group of 5 or 6 people, oh boy, all bets are off. What he's referring to in the video, I said, a lot of times, especially, let's say I'm going to be camping with some people long term, or I know it's someone that I'm going to see frequently, when we exchange phone numbers, because you don't have to just blurt out, do you want to exchange phone numbers? That can be awkward when you first meet somebody. But as you're having the conversation, maybe about their rig and their solar or the weather or whatever, and you mention something that you bought or have that's interesting, and they go, wow, where did you get that? I said, I can send you a link. And that way they'll give you your phone number. You can text them. And you can say, hey, now that we have each other's phone number, do you mind if I take your picture so I can put it on my contact. And also, can you spell your last name for me? If you can't remember the last name, can you spell your last name for me? And hopefully they won't go Smith. You could say, well, I thought it might have been with a Y. So anyway, that's what he was talking about. I have people in my, I can look them up by their first and last name, and I'll put, if they have a spouse, I'll put their spouse's name. I have their picture. I don't have to rely on this noggin. Eddie Shank says, ask them about their stuff. You are so correct. But I would dare say that the best way to befriend someone is to be careful talking so much and ask a general question about something you have a good idea they would enjoy telling you about. Great video. Eddie, you're the man. Eddie's right. I didn't even think of this. Sometimes we get so nervous that we overtalk. Right? And if you even if you do that, you've been around people like that just go on and on and on, and you can't get a word in edgewise, and you're not really caring about what they're saying, and all you're thinking was, how can I get away from this person? And the last thing you're thinking is, this person would be a good friend. So he's right. Don't talk too much. Listen, and get people to talk about what they're interested in. Ask them questions. Hopefully you won't run into a person that just talks. Right? And I'll give you another little hint. A therapist trick is, we call it reflective listening. When someone's talking about something that happened and they're telling you a story or telling you about their rig or their solar, when I say asking questions, include in there, sort of paraphrase what they're saying. So you only paid $400 for the whole system here, and that's amazing. How much, what can you run in there and for how long? Does two things. Obviously, it gets them answering a question and continuing to talk about what's interesting, but it also sends them a very clear message that you are listening to, taking in, and understanding what they're saying. That's called reflective listening. He told you it costs $400. You're repeating that back to him, and you know what? Most people love to be listened to, love to be heard and understood. And you can even throw some emotion in there. You could say, well, you only paid $400 for that. When you figured that out, that you could do it, you must have been really excited. Empathy. You're like imagining if you found a solar system for only $400, how excited you'd be, and you reflect that back to them. That's empathy. Let's see. Deanan Keaton says, thank you for another great video. Could you share a little about the diversity of the nomadic population in Quartzsite? Appreciate your consideration. Thank you in advance. That's a really good question, too. Yeah, little coffee. Feel free to drink yours. What are you drinking, by the way? I do. Coffee aficionados will probably unsubscribe immediately and never watch me again. Starbucks instant coffee in cans. I open up my thing, I put a scoop of it in there, boiling water, creamer, shake her up, and I'm good for the whole morning. Diversity of, okay. Like any group of people, there's a lot of diversity. There are the things I've talked about, the things that we have in common. We all really love RVs. Many of us are nomads and embrace, the nomadic lifestyle. Some people do that full-time. Some people part-time. In my experience, about half and half. Half the time people say, well, we have a house in Minnesota. But we hit the road about 9 months out of the year. We're only in our house 3 months. Someday we're going to let the house go, but we're not ready to do that yet. That's a typical conversation. And other people say, "Oh, I move all the time. I haven't lived in a." They call them sticks and bricks, and my casita here is sticks and bricks. But when someone says sticks and bricks, they're talking about a permanent home, that has plumbing and electric and everything, and you sleep in it and you cook in it, a house or an apartment. That's sticks and bricks. And usually a casita like this isn't in that category in the lingo of nomads. And they're people that travel in their RV just, for their winter vacation, or, and they head down to Quartzsite and they just love it down there. But those are kind of the minority of the circles that I run in. Mostly you're going to find older people. You're going to find people my age, by my demographics, your age too. But there, in Quartzsite, it's so big, there's a contingent of 20 and 30 something people that hang out together and camp in the desert. It's small compared to the big picture are retired folks. Are there socioeconomic? Is there diversity there? Of course there is, like there is everywhere else. They're the one percenters. There's the guy with the $500,000 or $600,000 Class A with 4,000 amp hours of solar and running their AC and satellite, and that it's rare. They're not hard to spot. It's rare, but you can see them because it's visible. You can see a mile away. Wow, that looks like an expensive rig. And it's the 1%. They're out here too. You've got people like me that are, I've got a Winnebago Micro Mini that brand new cost me $27,000 4 years ago, and a 2018 truck that cost me $30,000 7 years ago. Is it 7 years ago? Yeah, 7 years ago. And that's it. Then you've got people that, are on more of a fixed lower income. There are people out there you're going to meet that are on Social Security and disability, and they're doing this lifestyle on less than $1,000 a month. And they're driving sometimes a 20, 30, even 40-year-old rig and older. And many of them have found a way to make it work. I'm constantly amazed about friends I have that have very old rigs that, they're running the original refrigerator, the original hot water heater, the original air conditioner, and all that stuff is still working. It's amazing. That's not to say there are people that have old rigs that constantly struggle to, I can't, my AC hasn't worked for ages and ages and ages. I can't afford to have it fixed. That happens too. And certainly there are people that are just full-time retired and all they do is, it's a life of leisure, right? They have maybe Social Security and a pension. And then there are people that have to continue to work. And there are a couple of ways that people do that. Some people are lucky enough to be able to do it online, so they can do it wherever they go. Other people choose to work short-term gigs that are available and designed that way, like they call it work camping. And a big one is called the beet harvest. I said, the beet harvest, is that a thing? Do we eat that many beets? No, we don't. But do we eat sugar from the beets? You bet your sweet bippy we do. It's a big industry. And there's a harvest every year. And they hire people to come in for the harvest, which runs like 6 to 8 weeks. And they pay some big bucks for that 6 to 8 weeks. And they have hookups and everything they give you for your rig. And they pay you big money. And if you're interested in doing something like that, all you have to do is go to the big tent show in Quartzsite. It's around the 20th of January it starts, and it runs for about 10 days. The beet harvest companies, at least two, if not three of them will have booths there, and they'll hire you on the spot, tell you where and when to be, and we'll give you that cash of, I don't know, $2,000-3,000. If you've done it, jump in the comments, talk about what it's like, how much money you made, how hard it was. Amazon, during like the holiday seasons, they hire temporary workers, and if you really want all the opportunities, there's plenty of work camping pages on Facebook that you can join. So that's that group of people. They'll go work their butts off for 6 weeks, and then coast for 3 months, and then boom, go work and maybe be a camp host someplace for a few months, and then boom, go off again, and life of leisure. Then there are people like me. I'm retired, but 1 day a week I still work because I'm fortunate enough to have a profession. Being a licensed professional counselor, I can do it remotely, and I do it not quite a full day a week, but 1 day a week for extra income. So I think that's all I have to say at the moment. There's a lot more I could say about diversity, but I'll have to respond to Deneen and say, hey, watch this video where I answer your question. How are we doing on time? We're at 20 minutes. I think we can't we keep sitting here and chatting, drinking coffee for a while? I think we can. A7 Rack, Rob, totally fascinating, insightful. Thanks so much for sharing. I've had a lifetime of interesting experiences. I was at the 2025 RTR out in dispersed BLM camping and met people at the RTR events. We'll check out The Spot next time. That's a informal camp at La Posa South where anyone can go and drop tent or trailer there and live there for the season. And Q Camp is another one in La Posa South. Same thing. Also got the Insta360 X5. That is a very fancy camera that I also have. Barely started playing with it. Close-up of a tarantula. Looking forward to a close encounter with a rattlesnake. Andy from Santa Fe. Enjoyed your New York City gallery intro video. Well, thank you so much, Andy. And I don't have the reply here, but I said to him, look, that X5 is a great camera, but there's a steep, long learning curve. I really struggled with it. Those of you that saw me start using it this past summer will testify to, boy, those were some rough videos he did when he first got that camera, because it's not easy to use. Here's a question that I get quite a bit. And I think I should mention it more when I talk about Quartzsite. Cindy says, I'm curious if anyone survives staying in a tent in the LTVA. I sleep in my SUV, but set up my tent for hanging out in the day. I'm nervous about coming to Q because I haven't been there, and the wind and washes scares me a bit. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's alleviate, Cindy, let's alleviate your fears, okay? Especially if you're willing... if you're if you're going to stay in your car, sleep in your car, for me, wouldn't it be nice to be pretty close to a public toilet, even if it's a vault toilet? Shake your head, yes. So, if you're willing to, for the season, pay $180 or $40 for every 2 weeks, and you can buy those 2-week things back to back. So if you're only going to be there a month, it's $80. Right? If you come in December and just want to pay monthly, it's basically $80 a month, $40 every 2 weeks. Pretty inexpensive. That way, you have the vault toilets. And there's a rule, and I always recommend LTVA South because there's water available there, there's dump station there, there's my kind of people, my niche nomads, they're there. And a lot of car campers go there. There is a rule that says if you don't have a rig with a black tank, they call it self-contained. So you have a car, you don't have a black tank. You must park within 500 feet of a vault toilet. And you go, I got to park next to a toilet? Relax. Number one, 500 feet is a long way. 300 feet, that's basically a football field. This is 500 feet, almost twice that. Now think about how far away from the toilet you need to be. It's like, oh, there it is. It's off there in the distance. And it's not like the rangers come out with a tape measure. Reasonable distance. Brings me to point two. I found through people that I know that do that parking closer to the more popular spots where people car camp around vault toilets nearer to the entrance in the road, that little communities develop amongst the car campers around the vault toilet. They're much closer than 500 feet. And no, they don't stink. They're very nice. They're well engineered. Don't worry about that. But here's my point. You automatically have a community. People will be very nice to you. 100% of the time? No, they're jerks out there. It's a great thing about being mobile. If someone next to you is a jerk, talk with your wheels. Drive away. Go to another vault toilet. Go to another LTVA. There's always another option. But that's rare. It totally is. I had a guy I haven't seen him comment in a while. He used to comment quite a bit. But he came out with his car and his tent, and he was unsure. He'd never been to Quartzsite. He'd been watching my videos. He said, I'm going to just do the 2 weeks because I think this makes me nervous. And he parked pretty close to kind of the main one that people park around off the main road in La Posa South. So I knew where he was, and I drove up there, introduced myself. And I'd check in with him every once in a while. As I'm coming back from town, I'd see him sitting out by his car. I'd go over there and talk to him and his dog. And he ended up staying the whole season. He's like, this is great. This guy over here talked to me, and he gave me that, and he brought over some lasagna, and I met that guy over there. He had instant community, and he loved it. He ended up buying a pass. And I swear to God, when I left in like March, he was still there. I'm pretty sure he was still there. He had a blast. Wind, though, his little tent got destroyed in the first wind. So he learned his lesson, and he talked to other people around in his little community. They gave him advice on what kind of tent to buy and how to stake it down, and he followed those directions, and he never had another problem. But if you just have a regular tent, you use those little aluminum stakes that, come with a tent kit, and you tap it in there. When those winds come, bye-bye, tent. See you later. Easily solved problem, though. And it didn't, I got a nice offer from my friend Deborah Dickinson. She has a clip of me in a thing yesterday, so she's offering to send it over to me. So I said yes. I said that'll be in another video. Let's go back to how are we doing on time? Can you stay a little longer? Coming up on half an hour. I know you got things to do. Renee said, when you mentioned Denny, my buddy Denny, that's been in a couple of videos, and he's got DDK Travels, and I'm trying to help him get his YouTube channel off the ground. So if you can give him some love there, I'd appreciate that. And some love and some patience while he kind of figures out the landscape and figures out how to do videos, which ones are going to catch on. So give him some love, give him some patience. When you mentioned Denny and driving a Class A, it made me think about that. He's a truck driver, so that's good. He is. I think everyone buying a Class A should have to take a class. Just my opinion. And guess what? Denny agrees with you. Yes, even if they raise it to $600, that's cheap. We're talking about, and this is a little controversial. I had a couple nasty comments of me saying this. And what I said was they proposed to raise the rates from $180 for the season, which runs September 15th through April 15th, from $180 for the season to $600. And you raise anything that much and it feels unfair. It feels unfair. I'm sorry, it just does. But if you look at it in context, it's been at least a decade since they've done any increases, and they struggle for enough money to really maintain the place properly. They need to increase, and it would have been better had they incrementally increased it over time, so it wouldn't have been this much of a shock. But here's what I say that people don't like. It's still reasonable, right? If it's $600, it's 7 months. So if I stay the whole time, no, hardly anyone does this, but $600 divided by 7, it's $85 a month to dry camp. That's nothing. Divide that by 30, that's $2.85 a day. That's pretty cheap rent. But let's be a little more reasonable. Let's say you come just when the weather's comfortable, November, December, January, February, 4 months. So let's take 600 and divide it by 4. It's $150 a month, or $5 a day. Where else are you going to dry camp for $5 a day with access to drinking water, trash, and a dump station for $5 a day? I rest my case. And then people say, well, you're just unfeeling. There are people that come every year, and it's their one reprieve for the year, and they hardly have any money. And I say, well, okay, I get that. But there are free BLM 14 days areas around Quartzsite and nearby Ehrenberg, because you can stay for 14 days for free. Then you have to move 25 miles away, and then you come back. So guess what? If you draw a line on Google Maps between one of the BLM areas north or northeast of Quartzsite to the BLM area in Ehrenberg, it's like 27 miles. So it meets, and again, rangers aren't going to go out with a tape measure and Google Maps and make sure. They don't know where you were. Just if you're a stickler like me for the rules, it works. And it means you would have to move from Ehrenberg to that 25 miles and every 2 weeks. That's not that much of a hardship, right? And even if you're staying in Ehrenberg to go into town and do stuff, it's more like 20 miles or less to get into the middle of town. So it's not, and it's open road, so it's 20 minutes to get into town. It's not a huge hardship. So I think it's okay that they're eventually going to raise that rate, whether it be 600 exactly or not. I don't have a clue. And I'll keep reading what Renee said. This is Renee Slater, by the way. Exactly, it needs to be raised to take care of things. Our insurance agent advised us against the Advantage plan. She's on to my Medicare rant. So we have the supplement and can choose our docs like you. I love watching your fish. Very soothing. I must have had a screensaver. That TV there must have been on screensaver. It was cool seeing George come out when you called him, and Dottie, of course, yeah. So let's see. When I did a video on costs in Quartzsite, Nomadic, Don said, if you have the LTVA pass, you can move from free BLM to free BLM in Quartzsite area without having to leave and go 30 miles away, which gives you more options for campgrounds that are less crowded during January and February. And I think that's absolutely true. If you have that long-term visitor pass, as long as you have that pass on your rig, I don't think there's any kind of an issue. And it suggests, though, during peak time, like the LTVAs are full. Okay, they look full, but it's only a fraction of the hundreds of acres of land that they have. So it doesn't take much. Even during the very busiest time, you can drive out a little ways and you're isolated. It's not a big deal, but it is a viable option. So I had this video on. I went to the hospital here, to a cafe in the hospital. They had really super good food. And I had a breakfast, a California style breakfast quesadilla and coffee for $5, including tax, tip, title, license, everything, $5. And I was just like, wow, this is just friggin' amazing. I was just like bubbling over with enthusiasm. And I said, how long has it been since you could easily buy a nice breakfast for $5? So Ray said, I asked Gemini, and I think Gemini's AI, about the $5 breakfast, and said, you likely could have purchased a simple breakfast with coffee, tip, and tax for $5 in the late 80s or early 90s. In the mid 70s, a diner coffee was sometimes 15 cents, and by the 1980s, it soared up to 50 cents, with a basic breakfast meal being a few dollars. Price increases since then have made the $5 total increasingly difficult. You think? Yeah. So the 1980s is the last time you could. And you know what? The 1980s, friends. 1980 was a long time ago. It was 45 years ago. 1980 was 45 years ago when I was in college. Look at this old fart. You know what? I'm going to save. I got a bunch more. I'm going to save them for another video, because they go off onto dental stuff and the RV disaster things. So I am going to delete the old ones, the ones that I just read, and I'm going to save the other ones for next time when we sit and have coffee. By the way, how do you like this little Mr. Rogers Neighborhood format? I just thought of that this morning. It seemed like it would be fun. I was a big Mr. Rogers fan when I was a kid. Mr. Rogers and Romper Room. Do you remember Romper Room, where she would hold up the magic mirror and look into the TV and say, hello, George. Hello, Sally. And she would say all these names. And when she'd say your name, because she'd say every name she could think of, when they said, hello, Robert, she can see me. She sees me. Romper Room. All right, guys. Let's see. Am I still connected? Can I control the camera from over on my side of the table here? Let's see. This is pretty cool that I can do. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. It's going to take a minute to connect, but it's kind of a neat little feature of I'm being filmed by an Osmo, DJI Osmo Pocket 3 camera with a microphone hidden right here. Hear that? Come on, connecting. All right. I got you. I hear you. And there it is. So, look. I see myself and I can control it. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll have coffee again soon. Take care.